10 years ago, the Turkish army invaded Cyprus. The colonels who then ran Greece had just overthrown the Cypriot government in an attempt to annex the island. The invaders were welcomed by the Turkish Cypriots as protectors. But as they advanced, thousands of Greek Cypriots fled their homes before them. Now, the island is severed by a border its own people cannot cross. Last November, Greeks protested as the Turkish Cypriots formalized the partition of the island by proclaiming UDI. This, the first of two programs, describes how the conflict began 30 years ago, when the Greek Cypriots sought freedom from British rule.
For those years, after the war, as I look back on them, it seems to me that Cyprus was really an exceptionally happy place to live and work in. During the Middle Ages, Cyprus had been dubbed Sweet Land of Cyprus, and it was then, as it had been before, sweet land, until it was soured by political violence.
Τον κόσμο τον διδάσκαμε ότι η Εκκλησία ενδιαφέρεται για την ελευθερία του και υπέβαλε κατά έναν τρόπο στην κυβερνώσα δύναμη αυτών των πόθων. Και λέγαμε στο λαό, μείνε πιστός σε δύο πράγματα, στον Χριστό και την Ελλάδα.
The Greek Cypriots, led by their church, longed to be free of foreign rule. But they dreamed not of independence, but of union with their motherland, what they called enosis.
Enosis means the union of, it's the Greek word for the union of Cyprus with Greece. For the Greek Cypriots, it's something of the heart. We have exactly the same characteristics as the other Greek nation. We have the same language, the same religion, the same culture, the same civilization. We are therefore Greeks.
But the British would not give up the island to Greece. They thought Cyprus vital to their military needs in the Middle East. They found support from the Turkish Cypriots, the other 20% of the island's population, who, fearing domination by the Greeks, preferred to stick with British rule. And as Cyprus was more prosperous than Greece, the British could see no advantage for the Cypriots in enosis. The Cypriots did not deny the benefits the British had brought. They had established law, planted forests, covered the island with roads. But this was all beside the point. They wanted to join Greece. And in Cyprus, unlike other colonies, the British had not brought democracy.
Well, of course, the British rule here was autocratic, but a benevolent autocracy. We did the best we could for the island in the difficult circumstances in which we were placed. The system of administration had to be governed by the political impasse in the island, and the fact that the Greek Cypriots were not prepared to take part in self-government, representative self-government, meant that we really had no choice.
The British had offered Cyprus its own parliament in 1947. The Greek Cypriots would have nothing to do with it. They wanted only union with Greece. They were taught from childhood to desire Enosis. The British had left education in the hands of teachers from mainland Greece. This had proved a mistake.
I remember when I was a student, windows were closed so that they would not hear us from outside, and the teacher was teaching us the Greek national anthem. And while he was teaching us, tears were coming out, were running down from his eyes. And we were also very moved. This was the way we were brought up.
The British tried to stop the teaching of Enosis. They made it a crime. But the church found ways to get round the law.
Και είπα, αφού μαζεύτηκαν όλοι οι κοινότητες, απόψε κύριοι ήρθαμε στο χωριό σας για να κηρύξουμε την Επανάσταση. Ζήτω η Επανάσταση. Το επανέλαβα 2-3 φορές. Όλος ο λαός εχειροκροτούσε, εφώναζε. Η αστυνομία προχώρησε να εκτελέσει αυτό που με είχε στην αρχή απειλήσει, να με συλλάβει. Όταν επλησίασε, εγώ προσέθεσα. Ήρθαμε να κηρύξουμε την Επανάσταση ενάντια στην αμαρτία. Τότε πάγωσαν, σταμάτησαν και επεχώρησαν. Και εγώ μίλησα ενάντια στην αμαρτία. Βέβαια, στο τέλος ομιλίας μίλησα και εθνικά. Η αστυνομία όχι μόνο δεν προσήλθε να με συλλάβει, αλλά πρώτη εχειροκροτούσε.
In January 1950, in every Orthodox church in Cyprus, the congregation was presented with a petition for union with Greece. The church announced that this plebiscite showed 96% of Greek Cypriots were in favor of Enosis. The British took little notice of this plebiscite or its organizer, the newest bishop, Makarios. A few months later, Makarios was archbishop. At 37, leader of the Orthodox Church in Cyprus, the main power in Greek Cypriot life. He had taken the only way to advancement open to a poor peasant boy. At 13, he had joined the monks at Kiko, the most powerful monastery in Cyprus. All Makarios' predecessors had talked of Enosis, but Makarios was different. He was determined he would be the one to achieve it. He would consider no alternative and no delay. He transformed the Enosis movement into a major political force. The British could not understand how a priest came to be so involved in politics.
Well, the Archbishop of Cyprus is elected by the whole Greek people of the island in two capacities. To be both their religious and national leader.
He had political opponents too, the communists and a moderate party in the town of Limassol, who, though they wanted Enosis, did not believe Makarios' hard line was the right way to get it.
Makarios called us at the Limassol bishopric, and he tried to explain to us that we must not oppose union. We have explained that we were not opposing union, far from it, but that it was very difficult.
Makarios told me that we have to warn them. And I said, Your Beatitude, leave it to me. I will pass the message to them in a wonderful way. And I went to Limassol and they have organized a group of people who have approached some of these gentlemen from Limassol, and they warned them that you have to be careful because otherwise we have the intention of taking different steps if you do not listen to this first and last warning.
They were obliged to dissolve themselves. Because I think they were, perhaps, they were also frightened of their lives. That was the climate which existed at that time.
Makarios carried the campaign to Greece and persuaded his fellow Greeks to take up the cause. He still needed to overcome the caution of the Greek government, who were reluctant to offend their powerful ally Britain. But Makarios so roused the Greek people that he forced Prime Minister Papagos to raise the issue with Anthony Eden, the British Foreign Secretary.
Well, Anthony Eden had had this bad operation and had been recuperating in Greece. And at the end of his time, my husband thought it would be a good idea if he had a talk to Papagos. And so it was arranged in my husband's study in the embassy. And unfortunately, all went well until Papagos said, et maintenant, le Premier ministre, la question de Chypre. And Anthony Eden said, ah non, mon cher, on ne discute pas ça. And that, unfortunately, had a very bad effect, because Papagos felt he'd been rather told to go into the nursery, you know, and play with the children. And curious enough, from that moment, the things really went badly. It was terribly hard for us to make them understand that this was not anything personal, you know, that we were... It was very difficult at that moment to give away any more of the British Empire, and especially an important strategic post like Cyprus.
Just as Makarios was rallying Greek support for Enosis, Cyprus took on a new importance for the British. The main artery of the empire had long been the Suez Canal, where Britain had a base of 84,000 men. But in 1952, a group of young army officers led by Colonel Nasser seized power in Egypt and threatened to evict the British from the canal zone. So the chiefs of staff decided to move the Middle East headquarters to peaceful Cyprus. Here, unlike Egypt, Britain was sovereign and could not be thrown out by a hostile regime. Britain was then still a world power, with treaty obligations to help out allies in trouble. She needed a staging post to garrison troops in readiness for action. The large number of men involved meant Britain could not make do with merely a base in Cyprus.
And that is why the chiefs of staff held the view that in order to be in a position to fulfill those obligations, if we were required to do so, it was necessary to have the use of the whole of the island for military purposes, which meant sovereignty over the island. Self-determination or any idea of Enosis, that is the union of the island of Cyprus, the kingdom of Greece, was out of the question from the British point of view.
Britain's new need for Cyprus conflicted with the Cypriots' desire to join Greece. But the matter remained a private family quarrel until the day before the House of Commons rose in July 1954. On that day, Henry Hopkinson, a junior minister in the Colonial Office, was to say one word which ended his ministerial career and brought Cyprus world prominence. The Labour opposition had begun to ask why the Cypriots, the most educated colonial people, had so little say in running their own affairs.
The opposition were insistent on some action being taken to advance the situation, and a lot of our own backbenchers were very worried. And all the more because all during this period, the talks were going forward for the removal of the British troops from Egypt. And that made our right-wingers, including, of course, the so-called Suez rebels who were fighting the withdrawal from Egypt, it made them even more nervous about Cyprus.
We were no longer prepared, the Conservative Party as a whole, to look at Cyprus as a little local difficulty, because it had assumed a quite new importance in view of our withdrawal from the zone.
The cabinet faced mutiny. 60 of their own backbenchers were threatening to defy the whip on the crucial Suez vote. This could bring down Winston Churchill's government. The cabinet's first concern was to assure the Tory rebels that though British troops were leaving Egypt, from Cyprus there would be no withdrawal.
And clearly, if they'd said anything weak about Cyprus, it would have created a panic in the Tory ranks, and they might have been in great trouble.
Henry Hopkinson's statement on Cyprus would be a tricky one to make.
Well, I made my statement in the House, and it went all right. Jim Griffiths, who had been Colonial Secretary of the Labour Party, got up and asked a few questions, which I answered quite simply and easily. And his fourth question was whether he could take it that it was the intention that Cyprus should eventually attain what he called dominion status, with the right to determine their own future. And of course this put me in a great difficulty, because that was the one thing that I'd been told definitely by the Secretary of State when he returned from Cabinet that morning that I must not do. So I had to tread very carefully. I said there are certain territories which, owing to their particular circumstances, can never expect to be fully independent. Fully independent, I said.
After he had said never, the word that caused the trouble, Hopkinson said,
I think the right honourable gentleman will agree that there are some territories which cannot expect to be that. I'm not going as far as that this afternoon, but I have said that the question of the abrogation of British sovereignty cannot arise, that British sovereignty will remain.
But there it was, and no doubt it'll go down to history. Jim Callaghan's always quoting it. When anybody says never, he always quotes what Henry Hopkinson said in 1954.
The word never rang round all Britain's colonies. It enraged anti-imperialists everywhere. This was just what Makarios had been waiting for. The uproar compelled the Greek Prime Minister to give in to Makarios and to force Britain's hand by raising the issue at the United Nations.
He decided to go to the UN. And I don't blame him, he couldn't politically avoid it. Well, he couldn't avoid it because when a whole people believes that something is easy, especially when it believes that something is right, that a Greek island should be given to Greece. A government cannot resist forever, it can resist for some years. He can't say to the people, I'm right and you are all wrong, especially when they are right.
Makarios expected the United Nations to back him because it had taken a lead in the fight against colonialism. But he had to be careful. He could not simply ask for Cyprus to be given to Greece, for this would have seemed like exchanging one colonial master for another. Instead, he got Greece to ask for self-determination for the Cypriots, the right to decide their own future, confident that they would choose Enosis. But Britain managed to muster enough support to defeat the Greek resolution. Makarios' disappointment and anger were shared by the Greek Cypriots in Nicosia.
I was quite young. I saw the demonstration. I decided to follow the demonstrators. I started to throw stones at the police. I saw these demonstrations as the starting for the freedom.
A month earlier, in a remote corner of the island, a Cypriot had landed secretly. He came home to revolutionize the Enosis movement.
It had been said that the Cypriots did not really want their freedom, and that if they did want their freedom, they would seek it through actions of violence.
Colonel George Grivas was a Cypriot who had fought in the Greek army and led an extreme right-wing guerrilla group in Greece. He was consumed with zeal for Enosis.
An armed fight was the only way leading to the self-determination of my native country, Cyprus.
Ήταν πολύ έξυπνος και είχε τα μάτια του σπινθυροβόλα. Σε καθήλωνε. Όταν μιλούσες μαζί του, έβλεπες μπροστά σου ένα ηφαίστειο. Ηφαίστειον γεμάτον από την αγάπη προς την πατρίδα, αλλά και πιστός άνθρωπος, πολύ πιστός.
He took the name Digenis after a legendary Greek hero. He kept his real identity a mystery. While Cyprus resumed an outward calm, the last months of peace it was to know for many years, Grivas was forging a secret army, AOKA, the national organization of Cypriot fighters. He imported arms, hand-picked recruits, and selected his targets.
I was asleep in the hotel opposite the police station, and the Greek officer in charge of the police station rang me up saying, Mr. Denktash, all over Cyprus explosions are happening. Will you come to the police station? Well, I said, you must be a very nasty man to wake me up at this hour and to play on me the 1st of April Fool Days, you know, making jokes with me. He said, it's no joke, come down immediately, Mr. Denktash, for heaven's sake. And I went down, and there it was on the wireless from all over Cyprus, bombs here, bombs there, and they had started.
Everybody was talking in the morning, all groups here and there in the streets. Were reading the pamphlets which were circulated by Grivas that day.
If our rulers refuse to give us back our freedom, we shall claim it with our own hands and with our own blood. AOKA, the leader, Digenis.
And talking about the explosions, there was another atmosphere, really.
I felt just that I have to do it. I had to fight for the freedom of my country. It was a strong feeling, really. I couldn't be out.
What you need to be a member of this organization was that you must be, at that time, a right wing, belong to right-wing party. I mean, right-wing you are all except the leftists, the communists. I mean, they check your character. I mean, let's say if you were going around in bars, drinking or having affairs with people that didn't, have a good name, they wouldn't choose you to be a member of the organization. You must have a good character.
Ήταν παιδιά που εξομολογούνται τακτικά, εκκοινωνούσαν τακτικά. Και το μυρμήγκι να το σκοτώσουν δεν το ήθελα. Όταν όμως εκλήθησαν στον αγώνα, φυσικά έκαναν το καθήκον τους και έγραψαν την ωραιότερη σελίδα της ιστορίας της Κύπρου. Έχω ορκίσει πάρα πολλούς νέους.
I swear in the name of the Holy Trinity that I shall work with all my power for the liberation of Cyprus from the British yoke, sacrificing for this even my life.
You have to take a Bible and put your hand on it and take the oath. You keep your secret. You tell nothing to anybody, not to your parents, not to your relatives, not to anybody.
If you betrayed your friends, you are a traitor. And it was very difficult for somebody who betrayed his country.
They would kill you or, you could not come out of that.
To their parents, AOKA's secret recruits were still just children.
I had a problem with my relatives, more with my father, that he thought that I was a moral person, moral girl, because I used to go out with men. And after I asked my leader of my district to break the oath and say to my father that I fight for my country and not just to amuse myself. And when I told him, he was so glad and moved that he gave me his blessing, but he lost his sleep.
I shall perform without question all the orders of the organization, however difficult or dangerous this may be.
They ordered me to execute to execute a Greek Cypriot. In the main road, a very busy road. And believe me, I pissed drop by drop in my underwear, because it was the first time I had a pistol. Very soon he arrived. I aim, I fire twice. For a long time I saw this person in my dreams. Even when I didn't sleep, I saw his face in front of me. Well, it was the first experience anyway. But later you get used to. You can say that after a lot of training and after some more killings, you get used to killing.
The British looked to Archbishop Makarios to put the moral weight of the church behind their battle against Aoka terrorism. They tried to pin him down.
I am opposed to the use of violence, but at the same time, I am opposed to the British policy which has provoked violence. However, I don't think wise to condemn violence in public, because I understand that a Greek section of the people is in favor of this method.
The British were baffled by the failure of this man of God to condemn violence. They didn't realize he was Aoka's founder and its commander-in-chief.
Yes, Makarios, on his way to the United Nations, while we have had this meeting with Grivas in Athens, gave him the green light to come to Cyprus and gave him money to pay the transportation. But he told him that you go there, you continue organizing things, but you will not start unless you receive an order from me. He did not want the revolution with battles and guns and machine guns and submachine guns. He was thinking of an explosion here, a demonstration there, some shooting to help or escape. And, well, this is the ideas he was having by that time. Of course, the other man was having, Grivas was having completely different ideas.
We had a meeting at the yard of Kiko Monastery outside Nicosia. And Makarios started talking to me about the struggle. And he said, well, I hope that having this struggle, we shall raise the international interest and we can come to talks with the British, who until now they refused to talk with us. The abbot, who was Abbot Chrysostomus, he was sitting away and he approached us and with a cunning smile he said, well, I know. What about you are talking so many hours? Well, it's easy to start, but it's very difficult to stop, he said.
By the summer of 1955,